Buon pomeriggio a tutte e tutti, eccoci di nuovo ad un altro appuntamento con Macmillan Education Time. Mi chiamo Laura Cavaleri e mi occupo per Mondadori Education dei progetti che portiamo avanti, appunto di inglese, che portiamo avanti anche con la casa editrice Macmillan, e all'interno di questi webinar che stiamo trattando, questa è la seconda puntata, diciamo così, il tema delle thinking routines. Oggi appunto il tema è thinking routines, examples and ideas. Qualche tempo fa abbiamo cominciato a proporre il tema sempre con le persone che fra pochissimo vi introdurrò, ma anche per chi non ci fosse stato relativamente alla prima parte di questo webinar, è possibile sia recuperare la registrazione sia vedrete seguire la parte di oggi, perché Daisy De Giovannini e Cristina Prandi, che saluto in attesa che compaiano accanto a me, eccole qui che arrivano. Buongiorno Daisy e buongiorno Cristina.
Buongiorno.
Appunto sia Cristina che prenderà la parola per prima, sia poi Daisy, appunto nel caso sia necessario fare riferimento un po' al contrario ad un frame o a una questione diciamo di teoria legata all'idea delle thinking routines, appunto sarà loro cura nel caso darvi qualche indicazione in più. Però ecco, la giornata di oggi è poi dedicata in particolare a esempi e idee che potreste voler condividere con i vostri studenti o tentare di portare in classe. Prima di lasciare la parola a Cristina, do come sempre alcune indicazioni di gestione dell'incontro di oggi. Staremo insieme circa un'oretta. È possibile interagire con noi perché potete inserire le vostre domande qualora appunto voleste approfondire un aspetto del quale le nostre relatrici stanno parlando o qualora abbiate una curiosità su questo tema. Sarà possibile inserire le vostre domande sulla pagina tuadomanda.it indicando il codice di questo evento che è 8617. Altro modo per farlo è utilizzando il QR code che di tanto in tanto faremo comparire in sovraimpressione. Se siete iscritte a questo webinar o se siete iscritti a questo webinar, l'attestato di partecipazione sarà disponibile nei prossimi giorni sul sito mondadorieducation.it. Dovrete andare a scaricarlo alla pagina attestati. Sulla stessa pagina potrete trovare le slide che Daisy e Cristina utilizzeranno per questa diretta. Se accedeste allo streaming in differita, l'attestato resta disponibile solo se avrete fatto l'accesso dalla mail di conferma di iscrizione entro la mezzanotte di oggi, mentre invece la registrazione del video resterà sul nostro canale YouTube allo stesso indirizzo al quale lo state vedendo in questo momento. Ho finito Daisy e Cristina, che sono appunto entrambe insegnanti formatrici, che sono colleghe e amiche, mi sembra di poter dire a questo punto di avere non solo capito, ma lo dico perché ne ho la certezza, sono colleghe al Liceo Giolitti Gandino di Pra. Daisy si occupa anche di fare l'ambasciatrice Erasmus+, animatrice digitale, appunto entrambe insegnanti formatrici, per cui insomma è da due buone testimoni della buona e nuova didattica che ascoltiamo alcune indicazioni che ci possono essere utili. Lascio la parola a Cristina, Cristina poi passerà a Daisy e alla fine, nel mentre, io raccoglierò le domande e quindi insomma ci vedremo al termine della loro presentazione per commentare insieme. Grazie Cristina, lasciate la parola.
Grazie, thank you, and welcome everybody to a new webinar of our presentation introduction to making learning and thinking visible. Now, let's just briefly recap what we said last time. That is, let's say something about the theoretical principles about MLTV. The first principle, the starting point, is that critical thinking is the core of this set of, let's not call them rules, but of these moves. The school is the place where critical thinking must be exercised by means of practices that will also be applied in everyday life. And this is the first very interesting aspect, in my opinion. That is to say, we are not preparing our students only for their academic life. We are preparing them for life with a capital L. Project Zero, which is the name of the think tank of academics who put the basis of this theory. Project Zero's theory to enhance critical thinking is called visible thinking. And as the name suggests, it derives from the idea that learning can be mapped. It can be studied, it can be made visible, using specific routines. So what is a routine? A routine is a set of moves we always do in the same way. So also the idea of set of moves is applied in this case. A thinking routine is therefore a set of questions or a brief sequence of steps that are used to scaffold and support student thinking. The systematic repetition of these exercises will develop the habit to critical thinking in the students, helping them step by step. So this is important. It is the meaningful element is a systematic repetition. We must not use them thinking routines every time we have a lesson with the class, but in a repeated and systematic way. Last time we introduced the first of a series of routines, and which is also probably the most popular, is the easiest thinking routine, that is see, think, wonder. As you can see from the title, we already have the steps through which the thinking routine develops. In the title, we also see the word wonder that explains clearly that the ultimate aim of the routine is to invite the students to ask themselves a question, to wonder. But in my opinion, wonder also contains makes reference to the act of marveling, therefore of using one's curiosity to discover more. And again, curiosity is another important ingredient in the life of our students that we should always aim at developing. Today we are going to show you some other very popular routines, as I was saying, but there are so many of them, really, that I do invite you to go to the Project Zero web page. You will find the reference to the web page in the material of the course. And once you are in the Project Zero web page, look for the toolbox page where you will find all the thinking routines that Project Zero prepared and thought. Just some more words about how to start a thinking routine in our class. First of all, when using a thinking routine, always remember to describe the purposes of the routine to the class. It is about metacognition. So this increases the possibilities for the students to develop a deeper learning. Also provide the questions that will lead the 3 or sometimes more steps of the routine. Model the procedure. What does this mean? Explain the procedure so that the students can understand how to use the strategy. And last but not least, monitor and support students as they work through the various steps of the routine. Now, the first one I would like to share with you is think, pair, share. It is a very popular routine, probably because it can be used really from kindergarten onwards to university, we could say. It involves, as always, these 3 steps. The first one is posing a question to students. So the teacher asks a question to the students and then asks them to take some minutes of thinking time to provide an answer that they think is meaningful and complete to the question that the teacher has asked. Then, second step, the student turn to their friend sitting in the nearby desk, and at this moment the share step starts. That is to say, both students share what they answered. So their answers are explained to each other, and then they try to see if it is possible to give an even better answer to the question that the teacher asked. The idea behind Think, Pair, Share is manifold. Think, Pair, Share promotes understanding through active reasoning. That is what students have to do both in the think step and in the share step. Explanation, they have to be capable of explaining their answer to their partner. But also this routine promotes the understanding of multiple ideas because they will, first of all, they will have to try and understand their friend's opinion. But then there will be another share moment when the whole class will discuss together the answers given. It is as all routines based on pair work and group work, which is always very, very useful to develop deeper understanding. It involves active listening to each other because students have really to listen carefully to what the friend, their partner is saying. And also, last but not least, the participation of all students. When and where can I use this routine? It can be applied at any given moment in the classroom, really. For example, when we are approaching a solution, for example, when we are solving a math problem, before a science experiment. Why am I referring to subjects that have little to do with the teaching of English as a foreign language? Because one other great idea behind the thinking routines and MLTV is that it is the whole group of the teachers, the whole consiglio di classe that should work using thinking routines. The more teachers are involved, the deeper will be the effect on the students. But also it can be used after reading a passage or a chapter of a book, and we may want to ask our students to take a moment to think about a particular question or issue that came out from the passage read, and then turn to their neighbor and then share their thoughts. Sharing can be done, as I was saying, it is done in pairs, but can also be done in small groups as a subsequent step, and later as a whole class. What are some tips that I could give you for starting and using Think, Pair, Share? First of all, when we use for the first time, when we introduce the routine, when we use it for the first time, we might want to scaffold students' pair conversations For instance, by reminding them very simply that they have to take turns when speaking, or that they have to listen carefully, and they have also to ask questions to one another. One way to ensure that all students will listen to each other is to tell students that you will be calling on individuals to explain their partner's thinking, as opposed to telling their own thoughts. So this will oblige them to pay attention to what their partner is actually saying. We should always encourage our students to make thinking visible, either by writing their ideas, or also by drawing their ideas before or after, or during the moment of sharing. Drawing is important. It's a very inclusive choice, and really expands this unit at any level at school. Student pairs will then report their thoughts to the whole class, and a list of ideas can be created in the classroom. I was saying this routine promotes the participation of all students, because also quiet students, those who find it difficult to interact with the whole class in front of them, also quiet students can answer without having to confront their classmates. But we have to remember that a full class discussion at the end will generally be very, very fruitful. Now, I prepared an example taken from Upskill. Upskill is a new textbook by Macmillan, and this example is an article taken from the first volume, which is for the first year of middle school. Now, the article is about meatless Mondays, that is to say, one day in the week in which people promise not to eat meat in order to help save the planet, reducing the amount of CO2 emissions. The article explains the origins of the initiative, the reasons behind the initiative, and ends by saying, with Meatless Mondays, one person can make a big difference to the lives of their families and friends, and to the planet. Apart from the usual comprehension questions that are extremely useful for the students, but also for us, in order to understand if our students have really understood the idea or the main ideas of the passage, what I suggest you to do is to start the Think, Pair, Share routine giving a question, which is, why does the article say that with Meatless Mondays, one person can make a big difference? So, as you can see from the question, this is not, they will not find exactly the answer in the article, in the text. It will not be something like the cut and paste thing that they do sometimes when they are answering comprehension questions. They really have to stop and think a minute in order to provide a meaningful answer. Then, second step, pair with a friend. Then, third step, see if together you can make your answers better. Now, as you can see, as you can easily imagine, the share step really leads students beyond, it leads them to go beyond the surface of information, and to apply a deeper understanding to what they have just read. They will involve higher level thinking skills. but always if we have chosen the right question. So choosing a question which is an open-ended one, but which is not excessively easy for them to answer is very, very, very important. So remember to choose the right question that will ensure a fuller class discussion at the end of the thinking routine. Now, there is another routine I chose, which is one of my favorite routines. The title is Color, Symbol, Image. Now you have become a little proficient in the way thinking routines work. And from the title of the routine, I think you have immediately understood that this routine asks students to move from one medium into another one, to distill comprehension, to distill understanding from one medium to another one. It is very useful. You will see why, because it enhances comprehension, as all thinking routines do, and it can be used in any moment during our lesson or our unit. Also, just to stop and think a moment about the full understanding of a text, of a music, of an image. Now, let's see how it works. This time, I share with you something I did with a class some time ago. First of all, when we in the last webinar, we spoke about how to really make the routines with our classroom. We said, okay, we can do it in the analogical way, that is to say, in the classroom with sticky notes, post-its, posters on the walls, and so on. It can be done totally remotely online. I did this specific thinking routine in a hybrid teaching environment. Hybrid means that I had some of the students present in the classroom and some others were at home because of the COVID pandemic. So I decided, in order to allow everybody to take part in the routine, I decided to use a web app which is called Padlet, that you probably know. And I prepared a Padlet for the class, and the subject they had to work on was something that probably we all have used in our classes, that is to say, a graded reader in this case, by Charles Dickens, and it was Oliver Twist. In particular, there was an extract, there was a chapter you probably remember very well, in which little Oliver asks for more food. They read the chapter at home, and the first thing they had to do was to give their ideas about the real meaning of the event that Dickens had described. So I asked them to identify some of the interesting, important, insightful ideas that the text contained. And as you can see, they posted their ideas on this Padlet. Anna said that Oliver wanted just more food. He was hungry, he wanted more food. Georgia went a little deeper, saying that he wants a better life. Samuele said he wants to be loved. And Martha said he wants the life children need to have. So the aim of this activity is not a total perfection in grammar. The aim is to allow the students to express their ideas, to give their opinions, to really put something of themselves in what they say. So what we do not have to say anything, we do not have to correct it. At this first level, the teacher is just there not to comment, but to choose an idea. I chose Georgia's idea, he wants a better life, because it enabled me to go a little beyond a more superficial interpretation of the scene. And so I asked them, and this is the first step entitled color. What color would you choose to express the essence of Georgia's idea? So he wants a better life. Students working at school could just put some, I don't know, felt tip color on a sticky note. The students from home could choose from the internet some blocks of colors that they could post together with an explanation. I am sure you start to see why it is called visible thinking. Let's go back a bit to Anna. Anna had written, he wants more food. Her interpretation was the basic one. But after Anna read Georgia's, Samuele's, and Marta's interpretations, she understood immediately that there could have been more than one point of view. There could have been more than one interpretation of something that she had interpreted, we could say, at a face value. Then, moreover, in reading the explanations written by their friends, we really, the students really can start understanding what is happening. Now, your question might be, well, you said it has to do with sharing, pairing, and then sharing. Obviously, here there was one name for a person, but there was a pair of people behind the name. The second step is the symbol step. Now, here the teacher chooses another idea from the list of ideas that were given by the students at the beginning. And this time I chose Samuele's idea, that is to say, Oliver wants to be loved. And my question was, what symbol, which is important, symbol is not image, is not picture, is something different. What symbol would you choose to represent the ideas, the emotions that Samuele wrote in his post? Again, some students can go online, if you're using, for instance, Padlet, to do this activity. They can go online and look for a specific symbol that they think is meaningful. Or in the case of Padlet, recently, some time ago, they the Padlet people added a possibility that is to draw on the Padlet. And as you can see, someone drew two arms hugging, and she said that this is a hug because he wanted to be loved. It is easy to see how different the mediums involved so far have been. But the third step goes even further, because in the third step, the teacher chooses another idea. In this case, I chose Marta's idea. He wants the life children need to have. And the pairs of students went, surfed again the internet, and they found pictures that they thought were particularly meaningful to express their point. That is, for instance, that children need to go to school, not to work, or that children must be allowed to play. With a part of the class of the students that were at school with me, they just drew on their sticky notes or on their paper. Again, this is a very inclusive activity because everybody can do it. Also, those students who find themselves uncomfortable in writing, also those who for some reason in that moment cannot write, everybody can draw. So this is really an activity I suggest you should try with your class. It's very easy. You can do it from the first year to the third year of middle school, but also can be done also in the high school. And it's very, very rewarding, not only for us as teachers, but also for the students, because they really see how they can move, how their thinking processes can move. Now, Daisy, I think your turn has come so that you can introduce more interesting thinking routines to our friends online.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you for your thorough explanation. Good afternoon, everyone. So as you can see in the next slide, now we will talk about the circle of viewpoints. Again, as Christina was saying, these set of thinking routines we are presenting today can be applied in every level of school. Could be really young pupils to secondary school students. Okay, so I really think that this one is really powerful. You see in the picture I put on the right, the circle viewpoints, we have three steps. Again, we are talking about making the thinking routine visible, and you really see how it works. So first, we are talking about different perspectives. Um, you see, it helps students see, explore, understand the reality, not from just one point of view, their point of view. They really have to put themselves into someone else's shoes. Personally, I really like this kind of routine because it fosters emotional intelligence. Because by trying hard to see the reality from a different perspective, it really boosts motivation, empathy, social skills in general, self awareness, and self regulation. Christina was saying before that, for example, when students work with thinking routine, they take turns, they have to listen carefully, and this fosters the emotional intelligence. So I really suggest using this kind of thinking routine because it really brings life into the class, and it is really important to see and explore multiple perspectives. So that the students really understand that the different people can have different kinds of connection to the same thing. And of course, connections can influence what people see and think. So it is really important to go deeper in the learning. And when and where can it be used? At the beginning of a lesson, in the moment in which we are open to a discussion about dilemmas or controversial issues, I think it is really, really powerful. So you see here, there is point number one. I am thinking of something from the perspective of students must become actors. So they are not just telling the story; they really should feel in first person what the character that you choose is thinking and is saying. So it's a real important exercise. What do we need in order to develop this thinking routine where the student think from a perspective, then he describes the topic from a particular point of view, and in the end we will have a question from that point of view. So you see these three different steps. So I am thinking, choosing a viewpoint, then the core of what you think, and in the end a question that you can ask. It really goes deeper in understanding the situation. I put a picture here where, and I also put some arrows. You see, first of all, we should brainstorm a list of different perspectives. Of course, here I chose 3. We usually think that it is better not to have more than 3 perspectives. It could be 4, but not more than this, because otherwise, if you make your students work in groups, maybe there is just one group focusing on one perspective. Okay, it is really nice to have maybe 2 groups using the same perspective, and then they interact and they show how it goes. Okay, so the trigger should be really effective. You see that one of my 3 perspectives is quite peculiar. It's the cat. So maybe when we think about the circle of point of views, you think about the point of view of a person. But if you give something, let's say, unusual, students will really like working on this, because they really do something which is not common. Okay, so for example, if I were a student, I would choose the perspective of a cat, not just because I like cats, but I think that it is really stimulating. Okay, so you have to foster the divergent way of thinking, and I think it is a very, let's say, rewarding perspective. And then you see what happens in class. So of course, every time you give the possibility for the students to work on the thinking of this kind of thinking routine, please give them time to think, to brainstorm the perspectives, and then of course to start working on this perspective, because it's really fundamental. Not too much time, but at least 3-4 minutes to work together on this. And as we were saying also before, thinking routines work when students are in groups. Okay, because of course it is again the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. All these characteristics develop in the group, and it triggers communication. So here, for example, you see, this is the same book that Christina mentioned before. It's Upskill. Again, I put 3 arrows. One is a boy, a girl, and the new perspective, the dog. Okay, so I really think that students would like to choose the perspective of the dog, because it's a bit different, and it is really, really interesting and engaging, I'd say. Of course, we can also work on this kind of thinking routine using technology. As Christina said before, we can work with post-its. Okay, but let's imagine we have some students at home and we want to engage and involve everyone. Or maybe if you can use a lab, you can go to the lab, you can have your students working together, and you can use some tools, some digital tools. I'd like to show you Sutori, which is really, really powerful. If we can share it now, we can see an activity I have done with my students. Okay. Can you share Sutori for me, please? Can anyone do it? Okay, so this is the example at time. Okay, right. And this is the page we can see. Of course, Victorian education is a topic that you could think is maybe too much for a middle school, but of course we can, let's say, take a test and work on the perspective. Of course, probably every one of you know how was the story of the definition of a horse in hard times. And I think that the perspectives are really interesting. So we chose 4 different people: the teacher, who was a very strict teacher, the 2 important students here, one was Sissy Jupe and the other was Bitzer. We added, because my students asked me to do it, a 4th perspective, the group of the class. So I really found it interesting that my students added one more perspective, more than the usual ones. Okay, when you work, for example, with Sutori or with Padlet, Mentimeter, so with something digital, you should be really, really clear what you show and your assignment. So you prepare, let's say, some notes like this, by clicking in the center of the line, you get the possibility to add pictures and text. So Sutori is really easy. If you want, it is a freemium tool. So if you don't pay for the account, you can have some very interesting characteristic. For example, you can do this. So I wrote the perspective, so every student knew which perspective was, let's say, available. Then on the other side, I wrote how it worked with the circle of viewpoints. Okay, so you can start working like this also when the students do not know anything about the routine circle of viewpoints. They will learn. Let's say, they can really understand how it works by reading. The teacher, as Christina said before, is always present, but is not intervening too much. It's just helping and monitoring. So if the teacher is needed, he is there. But I really think that students should be empowered to work alone and to find the answers. So here they have everything. I asked them to write me the name of the groups and to choose a color so that it was easier for me then to check which group has written which kind of perspective. Then I prepared a sort of scheme with the 4 perspectives. Here we have the teacher, and they decided, for example, I have group 6, I described the teacher, and also group 5. So 2 groups decided to work on the first perspective. Then we have Sissy Juke. You see the colors. It's really easy for me to check who the people working group 1 were, because I know that I had the same color in the definition of the groups. And for example, here in group 1, the students are really precise. They say, I am thinking of the behavior of Mr. Greg Ryan during the lesson from the point of view of Sissy. Okay, and then they move from this to the personal perspective. So they write as if they were Sissy. And I think it is really powerful because they really feel the pathos of the situation. So they say, the teacher is really rude and I don't understand what I said, which was wrong, and my name. And then the final question, why can't he be kinder to us and more inclined towards other opinions? So they really ask themselves a question, thinking, let's say, as they were the people in the Victorian age. So scrolling down just to show you, then we have Bitzer, the pupils, 2 more groups with the pupils. With this kind of tool, you can also add a forum. Okay, so if you want students after the activity, if you want students to go deeper, if you want to ask a question, to ask them to express themselves, referring to the kind of education was described in the Victorian age. By the way, in the extract, they wrote with a name a personal opinion, and I really think it was a very nice activity because they really focused on what they were doing. They had fun. Okay, thank you. So we are done with the presentation, and I think it was a marvelous, let's say, 1.5 hour time together, because really after this they remember the story and they really gave me a positive feedback on this. So I think this thinking routine is one of my favorite because it fosters communication. It makes students interact. with self-regulation, because they really care about what the other is saying. In this case, they wrote it. But then in the end, we had a discussion. And I really think that it is quite motivating. And in the end, it worked really, really nice. I move very quickly to another thinking routine, because I think that also this one is quite powerful. It is called headlines. So we are talking about titles, but pay attention. It is not just, let's say, a storytelling activity, in the sense that we take an article and then we give the best title possible. No, we are not focusing on this. We are focusing on reflecting on the essence of things. Okay, they reflect and synthesize what is inside a text, but it could also be a discussion. Okay, something that it is not written down. It is something which happens live in the class. So, for example, after a group of lessons about a topic, you could ask your students, okay, let's give a headline for this set of lessons, or let's find out a title. So if you were to invent a title for the discussion we had, what would you say? This is really important, because again, working together in small groups or in pairs, they are really able to focus on the essence of what they were doing. And of course, you can understand that students have to pay attention to what is happening during class. Otherwise, they cannot work like this. So it fosters critical thinking. It fosters creativity. It is really, really easy to do, but it has a very powerful effect. So capturing the essence of maybe a book, an article. You can do it also after a field trip, after watching a movie, after a discussion. As I said before, you reflect on the core idea. You find the title, and then you share it. Maybe during class discussion about these titles, you really see that the use of this title, the invention of these titles, are quite central to get to the core of a lesson or discussion. So the title should capture the impressions and the key ideas about the topic being explored. And again, this is also quite impressive, because as I said at the beginning, it is not, the most important thing is not the perfect title, the best headline. They should really focus on the other students' invented titles, and they should be able to capture, understand the surface nuances of the way their way of thinking. So they are asked to reflect individually or in pair. Again, one characteristic that I think you really understand that it's crucial is the time. You must give students time. So a thinking routine must be done very, very quickly. Students must have time to focus, to think, and they follow steps. And maybe the first time they really must think about the steps they have to follow. But if you work with thinking routines on a regular basis, let's say, it will become, let's say, a sort of good habit. Then, when they invent a title, they share it, they talk, and they, of course, arrive to the end of the routine with a very important knowledge of what was said during class. Here, for example, I found a text. This passage was about a boy who was a great surfer and who wanted to become, maybe in the future, an Olympic champion. And he refers to the activity of surfing by underlying his passion, which is connected to water, wind, also the fact that in order to be a professional surfer, he has to train hard. So first of all, I asked students, this was done with Mentimeter, by the way, it was in class, so students just had to use their smartphone at the beginning. So I asked them to give me some keywords referring to the text, and they say, of course, kite surfing, because this is the topic, the base topic of the passage. Then wind, amazing record, because he wants to break some records, challenging waves, and so on. So you know that at least they were focusing on the topic. And then I asked them to invent a title, and in their titles, and we said that it's not important to have the perfect headline, but we have to look at the different nuances that can surface while they read. So someone wanted to underline the fact that he is young and brave. Someone said this is the champion of the future. Someone said following your passion is really important in your life. So every let's say couple of the students working with me, they really manage to share their own let's say perception of the text. And in the general discussion, we got in the end all the elements that I think were important when I decided to use this kind of thinking routine. So in the end, I really would like to point out one thing, that using the thinking routines is really, really useful, not only because we are focusing and fostering the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, but we are really empowering our students to start using the English language as a means of communication. So they are not just studying this text by heart and telling me the story of this young boy. No, they are really trying to use the critical abilities in order to understand what the important information is, and they wanted to share it. They wanted to talk. They took turns. They listened carefully to what the others were saying, and they were quite polite in maybe agreeing with the others or disagreeing. So I really think that the thinking routines in class are a win-win. So we teachers, we win because we make our students improve their skills. The students also win because they are learning for themselves. They are learning for the future that the English language is fundamental for the communication. But step by step, they really understand how to work with the language. And they're not just doing what we want, they are preparing for the future. So I think this is the most important goal that can be achieved in a class. So I really think that thinking routines are, let's say, not a new way of teaching, because we have been using this kind of routines maybe without knowing that they existed. But now we are helping our students to create a step-by-step, a scheme to follow in order to be real critical thinkers. Okay, so, and I think this is what we wanted to share with you, me and Christina. And so, Christina, are you still there?
Yes, of course. Here, alive and kicking.
Eccoci qua. Allora, grazie to be alive and kicking. Lo sono state anche le persone che ci hanno seguito. Sono arrivate delle domande. Daisy, se tu sei d'accordo, te ne faccio una al volo perché è molto molto veloce da riferire. Ci hanno chiesto di ripetere per cortesia che sito hai usato per il cycle of viewpoints.
Okay.
Poi invece torno a Cristina.
Okay. Il sito si chiama Sutori. È un applicativo freemium, vuol dire che iscrivendosi per i primi 15 giorni è gratuito e ha tutte le funzionalità. Poi rimane gratuito se uno non vuole pagare un abbonamento personale, però alcune funzionalità vengono limitate, però quelle che avete visto, cioè la scritta, un'immagine, funzionano sempre.
Sempre.
In più si possono fare, ad esempio, dei quiz, che per dopo 15 giorni viene bloccato, quindi aggiungere quiz o aggiungere dei video non si può più, però per quello che ho fatto io, cioè ho chiesto ai ragazzi di scrivere dei testi, di cercare online delle immagini e caricarle, quelle si può sempre fare. Quindi alla fine io vi posso dire che si può usare anche senza come dire, acquistare un abbonamento, perché è efficace. E l'insegnante che lavora praticamente ha un codice teacher che dà ai suoi alunni, questi si iscrivono e praticamente è come se fosse una classe, diciamo, virtuale, possono sempre lavorare con noi e noi vediamo cosa fanno. Quindi molto utile.
Grazie Daisy. Allora su Tori passo a Cristina e le chiedo magari di ripartire un po' dall'inizio, perché una delle domande che sono arrivate è: dove si può trovare un repertorio delle thinking routines? Quindi parto un po' dall'inizio, poi per dettagliare
allora,
ulteriori domande. Quindi in
ecco,
realtà stiamo parzialmente rispondendo poi anche ad altre domande legate a su quali testi ci si può portare avanti per fare un po' di formazione, un ABC sulle thinking routines. Penso che appunto il sito che tu citerai possa essere un buon inizio.
Sì, allora lo trovate nei materiali già della prima, il link lo trovate già nei materiali del primo incontro, ed è il sito sostanzialmente di Project Zero. Il sito di Project Zero è molto grosso e io in particolare vi mando a questa parte che si chiama Toolbox. La toolbox, come vedete, vi raggruppa sostanzialmente tutte le thinking routines. In questo caso il primo livello di raggruppamento, vedete, è diviso per tipologia, e quindi non lo so, le thinking routines che vanno al core, che vanno proprio al centro, al cuore, quelle per introdurre ed esplorare idee nuove. E ce n'è un elenco, vedete, tantissime, sono le stesse ripetute anche certe volte, perché una thinking routine può avere diversi tipi di applicazione, può essere utilizzata con tantissime materie diverse anche, eccetera. Se voi cliccate su ognuno di questi titoli, potete entrare dentro la thinking routine, vi si apre una scheda che in genere è in inglese e sovente c'è anche una variante in spagnolo, e la scheda vi spiega come usare la routine, come introdurla, ed è estremamente completa. Se torniamo indietro un attimo all'inizio della videata, ci sono dei filtri, per cui c'era forse qualcuno che era interessato a capire un po' come orientarsi all'interno di queste cose.
Esatto, in particolare, scusa Cristina, ti interrompo un secondo, c'è
Sì.
qualcuno che insegna alla scuola secondaria di primo grado, quindi alla scuola
Certo.
media, e chiedeva, appunto, quest'anno vorrebbero sperimentare le thinking routines, chiedeva se ci sono delle routines maggiormente consigliate per partire.
Ma allora, in realtà secondo me e secondo loro non più di tanto, nel senso che, come era già intuibile mentre parlavo per esempio di Think, Pair, Share, sono delle routine che possono praticamente essere fatte dalle elementari, ma dall'asilo. Think, Pair, Share lo usano veramente all'asilo. Ci sono dei filmati, andatevi a fare dei giri su internet, perché c'è veramente, ci sono cose incredibili, però ci sono dei filmati bellissimi dei bimbi della materna con la maestra che gli aveva letto lei un racconto e poi gli faceva fare Think, Pair, Share sotto forma di disegno quando dovevano rispondere alla domanda. Sono cose interessantissime. Comunque, se guardate sotto questo primo set dove c'è scritto Types of Thinking Categories, ci sono 3 filtri, si aprono 3 menu a tendina e sono lì, vi dicono by teaching subject, e quindi potete anche sceglierlo. Torna di nuovo su un pochino, ferma lì, vedete esatto, lì, e potete scegliere con la materia, e quindi lì avanti si coinvolgono tutti i colleghi del consiglio di classe. poi by teaching disposition of competence, e lì di nuovo ci sono vari livelli di difficoltà, quindi by project, se abbiamo dei progetti interdisciplinari. Quindi una volta che uno ha selezionato i filtri che gli interessano, cerca, poi spulcia all'interno, esatto, all'interno del materiale ci può venire di tutto, veramente, c'è tantissimissima roba ed è veramente molto interessante. E possono essere veramente usate in molti ambiti, perché adesso noi le abbiamo usate in ambiti un po' più diciamo discorsivi, magari ho appunto letto il brano di Oliver, letto l'altra cosa di Hard Times o il lavoro sulla foto, ma possono essere veramente usati in tutti i momenti della nostra pratica didattica.
Grazie Cristina. Ultima domanda a Daisy, perché stiamo facendo tardissimo, invece se ha qualche spunto sull'idea di valutazione del processo proprio di thinking routines, cioè c'è un making learning visible, c'è una maniera anche per rendere, diciamo, gli studenti più consapevoli di quello che è un processo di valutazione, quindi non necessariamente un voto, forse il sapersi considerare rispetto ad un processo di apprendimento, cioè c'è una crescita segnalabile anche in questa direzione?
Sicuramente la crescita c'è, per segnalarla bisogna, come dire, essere accorti nel dare un feedback. Parliamo di feedback formativi. Secondo me le thinking routine e le attività in classe vengono uccise se noi diciamo ok ragazzi adesso chi fa bene dobbiamo mettere il voto. Allora nel momento in cui, ma lo sappiamo tutti, siamo insegnanti, la paura di una prestazione negativa brucia la creatività, brucia l'attività dei ragazzi, e quindi cosa bisogna fare? Soprattutto quando si inizia questo percorso con le thinking routine, utilizzare veramente queste strategie per migliorare l'esposizione, perché è quello che noi vogliamo, che questi ragazzi parlino in inglese e diventino consapevoli del pensiero critico che c'è dietro. Allora, in questo caso noi non dobbiamo dare il voto tutte le volte che c'è una prestazione, ma diamo un feedback formativo potente. Cosa vuol dire? C'è tutto uno studio sui feedback e potremmo aprire una parentesi amplissima, ma ho visto che il tempo è quello che c'è. Quindi diciamo che noi diamo un feedback sulla prestazione. Possiamo tenerci chiamiamolo un diario di bordo, dove io vedo chi sta migliorando. Magari il ragazzo timidissimo che non si è mai messo in luce così volontariamente, nel lavoro di gruppo invece fa venire fuori le sue caratteristiche. Queste sono le cose che noi dobbiamo valorizzare, dire a questo ragazzo guarda la tua prestazione è molto interessante, hai migliorato il tuo aspetto comunicativo, hai avuto un pensiero divergente molto interessante. Le parole, noi non abbiamo idea, o forse sì, speriamo, di come le nostre parole da insegnanti possano veramente cambiare la vita scolastica, okay, di un ragazzo. Quindi una parola ben detta, un feedback, allora se una prestazione, mettiamo, non è a livello, non gli vado a dire che brutta cosa che hai detto, vado a dire magari potremmo lavorare su questo aspetto, cioè magari potremmo centrare meglio, magari prova a rifarlo e essere positivi, mai usare la parola no, perché quello brucia l'attività, cercare di essere molto empaticamente consapevoli, perché il nostro lavoro è questo, e vedrete che con le thinking routine la qualità migliora. Poi ci sarà magari un momento di valutazione. Ad esempio, io il lavoro che ho fatto nel forum, ho chiesto loro un pensiero critico su l'educazione nel periodo vittoriano. Beh, qui l'ho fatto alle superiori, quindi qui c'era già tutto un lavoro di letteratura dietro, posso partire da questo per fare un'interrogazione. Però non prima di fare la thinking routine. Poi se vedo che c'è qualcosa che mi può dare uno stimolo, lo dico poi ragazzi, non prendiamoli mai in giro dicendo non c'è il voto e poi ti metto il voto, questo perdiamo credibilità. Bisogna veramente dar loro la voice and choice, dicevamo l'altra volta, la voce e la scelta di provare a mettersi in gioco, e sicuramente saranno contenti di dei progressi che stanno facendo.
Grazie mille, c'erano ancora altre domande ma purtroppo il tempo è finito. Io vi ringrazio moltissimo, ringrazio chi ci ha ascoltato, do appuntamento alla prossima volta e appunto l'indicazione sul lavoro, sui feedback eccetera, sulla valutazione formativa potrebbe essere un bello spunto per altre chiacchierate. Grazie ancora a tutti quanti, grazie Daisy, grazie Cristina.
Grazie mille a voi.
Grazie a voi, arrivederci a tutti.
Arrivederci.